Well, thanks for staying with us. You are aware, for those who have been following the news, and if you are not, well, be informed. A chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, proposed the creation of more polling units to chairmen and other stakeholders of various political parties. This is what we want to take a look at right now. Why is this necessary? And what elements of the electoral reforms that's so much talked about is this initiative of INEC? Festus Keyamo joins us this morning. He is National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee of the body. He joins us from Kontagora, along with Wale Ogwade, who is
Okoye.
President. Festus Okoye, yes. Yes. Along with Wale Ogwade, who is President of Voter Awareness Initiative. Both, of course, join us virtually. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. Mr. Okoye, you want to give us a quick background?
So much.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. You want to give us a quick background of how come we're here and what's new in this? How relevant is it? And what element of the electoral reform that we talked about is it?
Well, you know that access to polling units is central to the realization of the fundamental right of people to make their own choices and choose the leaders of their choice. And now, the last time we had new polling units in Nigeria was in 1996, and that is almost 25 years ago. And during this particular period, the total projected voter population in Nigeria was estimated at around 50 million. Now, we had the 1999 general elections with a voter population of 57 million. The polling units in Nigeria still remain static at 119,973. Now, during the 2007 elections, the voting population of Nigeria was around 61 million. The polling units still remain static at 119,973. During the 2011 general elections, we had a voting population, a registered voting population of 73 million. No new polling units were created. The same thing for 2015 elections. Now, during the 2019 elections, we had a total registered voting population of 84 million. The polling units still remained the same. So based on these variables, based on this reality, the Commission kept on engaging in what we call stopgap measures or ad hoc measures in order to create better access, in order to expand access to the voting units. Now, in 2007, because of the growing number of registered voters, the Commission created what we call baby units with a mother polling unit. But this did not go far enough, and the problem still persisted. Then in 2011, the Commission now created what we call voting points, in which case, when we
Oh, my apologies. I'm pretty sure that we're going to have him back. But Mr. Wale Ogwade, if you don't mind, do this in like 30 seconds just to take your opening comment before we take a break. How much of a game changer do you see this being? Okay, well, I guess we don't have Mr. Ogwade yet, but let's take a short break. Maybe by the time we come back from this break and these messages, it'll be ready. So please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. So, Mr. Ogwade, if you can hear me, how much of a game changer do you see these INEC plans for new polling units?
Yeah, it's something we have clamored for over the years. That's Voters Awareness Initiative. And we are happy that indeed it has fallen on good ears now and it is being given the attention required. Because obviously the rule is that once you are 18 years old, you become eligible to vote. And if you don't vote, then they obviously automatically you are disenfranchised. That's the technical language used in the electoral system. And if one is disenfranchised, then definitely he cannot be involved, because the government, democracy is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So to us, it's a welcome development, and we know that obviously it will be done. I want to rely on the statistics and all the data released by Festus Okoye. Obviously, he is in charge because he has all the data, so I won't want to go, well, so far the data he has released are in order. And of course, I know that the last time we have constituency delimitation was in 1996, before the democracy came up. And we know that in between then and now, that's close to 25 years ago, most of those who were delimited then, who got involved in the process, are almost grandfathers now. Some of them may not even be able to go out to register, not to talk of voting. So it's a welcome development, and we really appreciate INEC for being in tandem with the views and the wishes of the people.
Okay.
Mr. Ogwade, do you think that this initiative will encourage more people to come out and vote?
Obviously, because I'm involved in this process. You see some people who travel far and wide, I mean, in the rural areas. And I will give a very good example in Lagos, so that it doesn't seem, well, I will go to some place, because I know that people, this program is watched like all over Nigeria and even all over the world. Let's say in Lagos, someone lives in Alimosho, let's say Yanokwaja. And of course, he lives inside a place called Ayobo, and his voting point is in Yanokwaja or somewhere Nagwon Estate. If he has to vote, then he has to trek. You know that on election day, the country is locked down, so he has to trek. Because God helps him, if he's found driving and he's not an official, he will be prosecuted or he'll be arrested or molested. So that one will discourage going to vote. But now, with this project now, there will be an election point, a voting point rather, near his house. So let's look at somebody who stays in Benin, in Igwebe, and he has to go to somewhere like Afuze to go and vote. Obviously, that's another place entirely. And of course, he has to travel. Then maybe let's go to Ibadan. Then somebody is living in Busogboro, or now he used to stay somewhere around Ojo. You know what it will take without transportation. Do I need to go on? So to me, it will encourage voter participation and reduce seriously voter apathy.
Well, interesting that you mentioned the voter apathy part, but let me take this back to Mr. Okoye. You have already talked about holding further talks, engagements, and all of that with various other interest groups, stakeholders, as you call them, all over the nation. But from the meeting that you had with the various political parties, what was your reading?
Well, as you know, we had a meeting with the leaders of political parties yesterday, and 17 political parties attended that consultative meeting. There was a general consensus that the issue of expanding voter access to polling units is a national concern, and that we should build a national consensus around the establishment of additional polling units. For instance, if you look at the polling units, some of the polling units we have in Nasarawa State, there's a polling unit we call Maraba Garage 1 and Maraba Garage 2. Between the two polling units, we have a total registered voting population of 25,275. So, more often than not, voting hardly takes place in these two polling units because of disruption, and sometimes when it takes place, because of the challenges we encounter as a result of crowd surge, some of the results are more or less cancelled. So in between these polling units, we have almost 70 voting points. Now, these polling units were established at a time when Karu area was not really served by so many people. Now there has been population explosion, there have been new settlements, and so on and so forth. So what we are saying is that some of these voting points that we have created out of the existing polling units, we need to take the voting points to the people rather than the people chasing the voting points. Because on election day, some people trek almost 10 kilometers in order to come and vote. And If you are talking about persons with sight impairment, persons with other forms of disability, they have to move 10 kilometers to these polling units to go and access these polling units. So what we are trying to do is to encourage people to access these polling units, because there's a correlation between these overcrowded polling units and issue of voter apathy. So we want to move these voting points closer to the people that need them. And that's exactly the intendment of this particular process.
A number of people, Mr. Okoye, would probably suggest that rather than open more polling units, what's wrong with the electronic voting? That would make it even closer to people. I mean, they can literally vote in the very comfort of wherever it is that they are, rather than as opposed to moving around, especially at a time that we're talking about, social distancing and all of that. How do you respond?
Well, there are different aspects and different variables of electronic voting. The one you are really suggesting is internet voting. But, we need to do a gradual and graduated approach to deepening the use of technology in the electoral process. What the Commission is planning at present is the introduction of electronic voting machines in the electoral system. And in these electronic voting machines, they have to also be domiciled in the various polling units. So people still have to go to the polling units in order to go and access this. Then thereafter, we can now be looking towards people voting in the comfort of their homes, because as you know, the Nigerian population is segregated in different areas. We have those in the urban areas, we have those in the rural areas, we have people who are literate, and we have people who are not literate. We have people who have smartphones and those who do not have smartphones. And then we have areas that are served by the major networks and areas that are completely not served by the major networks. So we have to take all these things into consideration in designing a framework that guarantees access to all eligible voters in the electoral system. So I agree with you. We must gradually move towards internet voting. But as at now, we are looking at the introduction of electronic voting systems. And in this system, you must still take it to the people that need them. And that's exactly where we are as at now.
Mr. Okoye, the way you have explained it sounds like a no-brainer. So how come it took the electoral umpire 25 years to get on with this?
Well, you see, in 2014, the Commission attempted to create 30,027 additional polling units. But that process and that program did not succeed because it was politicized. But after we reviewed the entire situation, we also came to the conclusion that maybe the reason why we didn't succeed in creating additional or establishing additional polling units was because we didn't do sufficient consultation. We didn't really explain to Nigerians and the main stakeholders in the electoral process what the intentions of the Commission were. So many people read the intentions of the Commission differently. Some claim that the Commission was trying to favor one geopolitical zone against the other. So that is why we now decided very early enough, before the repoliticking starts for the 2023 elections, to engage the critical and main stakeholders, lay out our process and our programs, be inclusive and be consultative, and make sure that we get all the right things done, and lay all the things before the main stakeholders so that they will appreciate the enormity of the problem. You can imagine a situation where 25,000 persons approach 2 polling units on election day. No election can take place. So, and then you create additional 70,000 voting points in the same vicinity. It's a recipe for crisis. It's a recipe for confusion. And we are trying to make sure that people do not go to the polling units to suffer, because that is their first point of contact with the electoral process. And so we have tried various mechanisms and various things in the past that didn't work. And then during the 2019 elections, we created a total of 57,023 voting points and voting point settlements. So what we are trying to do is move these voting points and voting point settlements to the people that desire them, move it closer to the people, because New settlements are growing every day. New residential areas are being established every day, and they are not served. Now, in 1996, for those who live in Abuja, you can imagine the Gwagwalada area. The same number of polling units they had in 1996 are the same number of polling units they have as of today. So that's, for us, does not make sense anymore. So that's why we have laid everything before the Nigerian people, before the political parties. We are going to meet with civil society groups and organizations on Tuesday, and then with all the various stakeholders, so that we can put these things on the table. But the political parties told us very clearly that there is no debate relating to this particular issue, that they face it, they know the challenges, and they adopted the proposal of the commission to convert these voting points and voting point settlements into polling units and taking it to the people that need them. And we are very, very happy with the outcome of yesterday's meeting.
Well, Mr. Ogwade, the constituency that we are speaking with now are those who are more of those people who, as you said earlier, were part of the process from the very, very beginning, in the 90s and the rest of that. But today, the largest number of people who vote in the country are youths. How significant, from your perspective, is this move by INEC to this young population we're talking about?
Well, the future belongs to the youth, but be that as it may, either youth or old, just as I said earlier on, is the right of every individual living and who is strong enough, even if he's not strong, if he's sick. On election day, I've seen several people who have been moved on wheelchair, who are sick, who have been moved on wheelchair to voting points to vote. So the issue really is not about youth, it's about opening up the space for everyone to be involved. I just want to correct a point by my brother Okwe. The polling points, the voting points that they established is not the same thing as what they are doing now. The polling units that they established then was just to expand the space, because every polling unit is just to take 500 people at most. But because of the surge, or because of the population explosion, they had to create more polling units or polling points in each polling unit. So, let me just give an example. In Lokoja, during the last gubernatorial election, there's a polling unit called Ganaja. In Ganaja area, they have up to 17 polling points there. Ordinarily, it should be one, but because of there was no, this elimination did not take place, then they have to expand. So it's the same thing, because people who live around that environment, even towards going to Ajaokuta, they have to walk down to that Ganaja inside Lokoja town to come and vote. I guess maybe they read one of the reports of our people, because after any election, those of us who are accredited to monitor elections or observe elections write our various reports to them. And of course, he mentioned one which is very important, that because of the large number of people there, imagine 17 points in a place inside a school compound. Obviously, it was crowded, it was rowdy, and of course, we are not surprised that guns were shot and so many things happened that day. But be that as it may, I guess those things have been written in the report, they have studied it. With this now, it means that they are proactive, and I appreciate them for that. So now coming to the issue of the expanding the coast. Obviously, there is no going back. Nobody will say no, because everyone, we have seen that democracy has come to thrive in this country. Just as it happened in America, Trump thought he was a strong man and he could do and undo, but the people showed him that indeed power belongs to them, as it belongs to any place where there is democracy. And the people want to exercise their franchise, and they will exercise their franchise. It's not about awareness is about enlightenment, and it's about INEC itself creating the enabling environment for all these things to thrive. Then we'll have a successful election. Then about the voters, the electronic voting that you asked about. He is a member of the Nigerian Bar Association, and he knows that he voted in the last election from the comfort of his home or anywhere he was. He did not go to anywhere to queue. We'll go there, we'll get there. If somebody like Michael Festus Okoye is in the commission, I know that by serious engagement, they will see reason and will begin to engage members of the National Assembly. We have ideas, and maybe after this, I will relate with him, it is called, then we'll talk. Then we'll know how to move it further. We have ideas in voters' awareness. how we can move this and ensure that indeed, even the rural area person will be able to vote, and will reduce this lockdown. Locking down the country on election day is a huge stress on the economy, is a huge stress on people's life itself, is a huge loss on freedom of movement and so on and so forth. So we have to look at issues. It's not only Nigeria that they vote on election day, where they will lock up the country and people will just stay at home doing nothing. Sometimes it creates room for stress. So we'll look at that. I hope they will be able to have an opening here to listen to us and give us the opportunity to express our idea. It was like this, that a meeting like this, that we were able to serialize voters' card. That because before the voters' card was not serialized, that's why you saw people stealing, and of course they call it ballot box snatching then. But we brought an idea to our Jega then, and he accepted. And today, the issue of snatching of voters' ballot boxes are reduced, because if you snatch a ballot box in point P, you can't use it in point C because it is serialized, it is numbered. I hope they will understand, and of course, we'll relate with each other. I guess the issue of expanding the coast is non-negotiable, and we thank God that at least we've gotten to that level.
Mr. Gwande, staying with you, you are the president of the Voters Awareness Initiative. It's one thing to have more polling units, but it is people who are duly registered who are going to go there to use the units. People who are going to vote. What is your initiative doing about sensitizing people to register and ensure that they have their PVCs in readiness for the elections?
So in fact, on the 6th of January, we invited Nigerians and indeed the world that Voters Awareness will be carrying out a series of voter.
Oh dear. I guess that's just one of those things that happen with technology. But let's take this back to Mr. Okoye. So I don't know if you want to respond to some of the things that you've heard Mr. Gwande say, Mr. Okoye.
Sorry? Yes, I had him. Let me make the point that as of today, we have a total of 119,973 polling units. These are the polling units established in 1996, 25 years ago. Now, because of growth in population, because of the establishment of new areas and new settlements, the commission started with an ad hoc measure of creating what we call baby units. From the baby units, we graduated to the creation of voting points. And then after the area council elections in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, we established what we called, in 2016, we established what we call voting point settlements. So going into the 2019 elections, the commission had the original 119,973 polling units. And also, we established a total of 57,023 voting points. So what happens is that for each voting point, there is a polling unit. If in Maraba Garage, we establish 70 voting points, the moment elections are over in those voting points, the results from the voting points will be sorted out and calculated and entered into from EC8A VP, into from ECE8A voting point, and taken to the main polling unit for integration and calculation. It is that integration and calculation that sometimes causes challenges. When you integrate and calculate, sometimes there's overvoting in a particular voting point. And then when they take it to the main polling unit for integration, sometimes the party agents will insist that since there was overvoting in one polling unit, it has affected the entire polling unit. And then it leads to all sorts of challenges. But I agree that, one, the issue of voter access is key to the exercise of the democratic rights of the people. Under Section 42 of the Electoral Act, the Commission has been given the right to establish sufficient number of polling units and allocate voters to those polling units. So it is an administrative thing. It's an administrative right that has been given to the Commission to carry out. But, because of the challenges we've had in the past, in challenges of politicization and challenges of inadequate consultation, we now decided to consult and lay out our plans on what we want to do. We want a situation where polling units will be located in good places. We don't want polling units in shrines anymore. We don't want polling units in forests. We want polling units to be located in places where the secrecy of the votes can be guaranteed. We also want polling units to be located in places where we can observe all the COVID-19 protocols and also guarantee good voting experience for the Nigerian people. So I completely agree with some of the points my friend has made. But in relation to the issue of internet voting, you will agree with me that those who vote in the Nigerian Bar Association are not the same color, so to say, demographically, with the Nigerian people. There are some Nigerians who do not even know what is called smartphone, and you can't disenfranchise them. There are some Nigerians who cannot afford it in the first place, and you can't disenfranchise them. There are Nigerians who live in places that any of the networks has not even reached. You can't disenfranchise them. So what we are trying to do is to move towards a particular direction. And I believe that as time goes on, after we introduce the electronic voting machines, there may be the possibility of segregating so that some people will be voting using the electronic voting machines and some people will be doing internet voting from the comfort of their homes. So I believe that we have the courage and we are determined to deepen the use of technology in the electoral process, but we want to do it in such a way that the issue of access to the polling units will be guaranteed to every voter who has registered to vote and who is willing to vote.
Every Nigerian having a national identity number, it'll be so much easier for us to vote and not necessarily go, you don't necessarily have to have a digital device of your own. You should be able to use your personal information, such as the national identity number, to vote on any device, something that you also referenced the other time. Well, Mr. Ogande, you were making some point the other time, but add to that, what kind of expectations, what kind of things you think INEC should be expecting, especially when these other consultations with other, stakeholders, socio-cultural groups and all, when they hold those meetings, those interventions, what are the things that are likely to come out, especially when INEC is interfacing with them, and what are the things Nigerians should expect from such interventions?
Well, they should expect an upsurge. For them, they should just roll their sleeves and start working. Brother there has already said it, that the people are waiting. And if the political parties are in sync with them, then definitely it won't be otherwise for Nigerians. It won't be otherwise with Nigerians. It can't be. So the issue is that the Nigerian people are really in need of this development. This will not be objected to by anybody, any right-thinking person, a lover of democracy. We want the electoral process to be expanded. So INEC should just up its gates, engage all the relevant stakeholders, including members of the National Assembly and civil society, traditional, everybody, because all of us are voters in this place. All of us. There's nobody who can come out and say, I'm not a voter, per se. Nobody. We are all voters, and of course, we want the place to be a better place. And my brother raised some issues. Ordinarily, I won't want to, we lawyers like arguing, and he is a lawyer equally. And what we do is that we say we have a right of reply, but I'll suspend my right of reply until we meet physically so that we'll now discuss all these issues. Just as I said, I've thrown a challenge to him. Let us relate and let's discuss and see how we can help INEC. Nobody is a monopoly of knowledge. We have one or two ideas that you can use in making up it. In the area of electronic voting, because you agree with me that not many people, those who are not in the signal area of the internet coverage are far insignificant. Majority of the Nigerian people are covered by the signal. So we'll see what we'll do about that. I won't go further than that so that we move forward. Thank you.
Okay. Every conversation on television or radio or even in the media space generally is never to conclude it there. It's just to start the conversation. And it's gratifying that at least this conversation has started. Well, we have to thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us this morning. Mr. Okoye is National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education with INEC. as well as Mr. Wale Ogunade, who is president of Voter Awareness Initiative. Both of them joined us virtually. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts this morning. Sunrise is back in a moment. Do stay with us.